Hello everybody, this is David. Welcome back to my channel. Well, this is the next video in our series, The Christian Ethic in the 21st Century. And we're currently looking at the Christian ethic in the teaching of the Apostle Paul. And we finished the last video with the imperative that, or the instruction to be humble, that humility is part of the Christian life. It's the hallmark of the Christian life. And we finished the video with an intention to look at the difference of, if I put it like this, the Christian worldview with how the world thinks. And we're going to look at how the world thinks in the views of Aristotle. Now, the greatest person in the view of Aristotle was what's called the great-souled man. Now, for Aristotle, this is what he thinks. The great-souled man is the man who claims much and who deserves much. The man who claims little may be modest and temperate, but he can never be great in the thinking of Aristotle. The man who claims much without deserving it will be merely vain, not great. To be great-souled, then, involves greatness, just as to be handsome involves size. Small people, says Aristotle, may be neat and well-made, but they cannot be handsome. The one thing at which the great-souled man will aim is honour. It is necessary that he should be a good man. To be great-souled is the crown of the virtues, and it cannot exist without them. When persons of worth offer the great-souled man honour, he will deign to accept it. But if honour is offered to him by common people, he will utterly despise it. He will not rejoice overmuch at prosperity, and he will not grieve overmuch at adversity. He will be largely indifferent even to honour, for nothing really matters to him. This is why great-souled people usually give the impression of being haughty. The great-souled man has a contempt for others, and he is justified in despising them. The great-souled man is fond of conferring benefits, but he dislikes receiving them, for to confer is the mark of superiority, and to receive is the mark of inferiority. If he does receive any service, he will return it with interest, for thus he will continue to be the superior party. If he gives a benefit, he will remember it. If he receives a benefit, he will prefer to forget it. He will never, or at least only with the greatest reluctance, ask for help. To those above him he will be haughty. To those beneath him he will be condescendingly gracious. The ordinary objects of ambition will have no attraction for him. He will give the impression of being idle and slow to act, for he will be interested in nothing less than great enterprises. He can never live at the will of another, for that would be slavish. He regards nothing as great, nothing to him is to be admired. He will not bear grudges, but only for the reason that he is too superior for that. He will have no interest in receiving compliments. He will like things which are beautiful and useless rather than things which are useful. He will have a slow walk, a deep voice, and a deliberate way of speaking. So here is the picture of the conscious aristocrat, whose characteristic attitude is contempt. The Greek picture of a great man is the picture of a man who is conscious of nothing so much as his own superiority. A man to whom a confession of need would be a confession of failure. The blessings of the Christian view are for the man conscious of his own poverty, the man sad for his own sins, the man hungry for a goodness which he is sadly conscious that he does not possess, as we read in Matthew chapter 5 verses 3, 4 and 6. The Greek great man was the man who stood above and looked down. In the Christian ethic, the great man is the man who looks up to God, who knows nothing so much as his own need, and who sits where his fellow men sit. Wow. So there we have the difference then between the Christian view of humility and the world's view of humility. Let's look at something else. It is basic to the ethic of Paul, as it is to the ethic of the whole New Testament, that the Christian ethic is an ethic of love. That love is not an easygoing, emotional, sentimental thing. That love is not subject to impulses or motivated by passion. It is not something which flames and then dies at one time a burning passion, at another time almost non-existent. It is not something which depends on our likes and our dislikes for other people. It is the steady, unvarying, undefeatable determination to love people as Jesus loved them, and never, no matter what they do in response, to seek anything but their highest good. It is the goodwill that cannot be quenched. This kind of love is going to have consequences. What are those consequences? Let's have a little look. It will dominate the attitude of the Christian towards insult and injury. Revenge will be something which, if it even enters into the picture at all, will be in the hands of God. As for us, even for the man who counts himself our enemy, there will be nothing but concern, as we read in the book of Romans chapter 12 verses 19 and 20. The pattern of human forgiveness is the divine forgiveness, the forgiveness of God. As Christ forgave us, so we must forgive others, as we read in the book of Ephesians chapter 4 verse 32 and the book of Colossians chapter 3 verse 13. He who has been forgiven must be forgiving. Hallelujah. So this will mean that a Christian will never try to return evil for evil. They will always try to come evil with good, as we read in the book of Romans chapter 12 verse 21 and the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 15. The Christian will practice not so much a negative policy of non-retaliation as a positive policy by which kindness shames the other person into response, as we read in the book of Romans chapter 12 verse 20 and Proverbs chapter 25 verses 21 to 22. So this Christian love will bring into personal relationships a new tolerance. Patience, or forbearance to use an old-fashioned word, is the characteristic, or should be the characteristic, of the Christian attitude to other people, as we read in the book of Ephesians chapter 4 verse 2 and the book of Philippians chapter 4 verse 5. Now Paul was well aware that different people can quite honestly hold different points of view, as we read in the book of Romans chapter 14 verses 5 and 6. Now, of this tolerance, two things need to be said. Firstly, it is the tolerance not of indifference, but of love. It is tolerant not because it does not care, and not because it thinks that it does not matter, but because in sympathy it tries to understand why the other person thinks and behaves as they do. It is the tolerance which knows that there is a great deal of truth in the saying that to know all is to forgive all. Now, secondly, a wide tolerance in non-essentials, shall we say, does not at all preclude or stop or prevent the determination to take an immovable stand when such a stand is necessary. No one would ever dare to say that Paul was a weak character, but this inflexible Paul was able to yield on matters which he regarded as non-essential, or for the greater good of the community. Everyone knows what Paul thought of circumcision, for example, yet he circumcised Timothy simply because he knew that Timothy circumcised would find opportunities for the spread of the gospel, which would be closed to him if he were uncircumcised, as we read in the book of Acts chapter 16 verse 3. And we also know what Paul thought of the Jewish law and all its ceremonial parts, all its ceremonies and all its rituals and stuff like that. Yet Paul was entirely willing to finance those who were taking the Nazirite vow, when James suggested that he should do so as a demonstration that he was by no means a renegade from Judaism. As I said, he was the Jew of Jews. He was the Pharisee of Pharisees. We can read that in the book of Acts chapter 21 verses 17 to 26. So to be inflexible and to be stubborn are not the same thing. To be a man of principle and to be a victim of prejudice are very different things. Christian tolerance knows the difference between principle and prejudice. So Christian love is the control and the condition of Christian freedom. The Christian is free from the tyranny of law, free from the obligations which govern the food and the drink of the Jew, free from a legalistic slavery, but that freedom must never be used as an excuse for license. I'll do what I want. No, it is the freedom of a man who loves his neighbour and who will never do anything to harm them, as we read in Galatians chapter 5 verses 1, 13 and 14. It is, as Peter said, the freedom of the servant of God, as we read in 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 16. Now there is in one of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas a song, "Free, yet in fetters, bound to my last hour." The Christian is free, but the Christian is bound by the fetters of responsibility and the obligation of love. So we can see this very clearly if we set side by side two different pieces of instructions by Paul regarding food and drink. In the letter to the Colossians, he insists that Christians must never be bound by the laws of the ascetic, by which tell him that he must not taste this, he must not touch that, He must not handle this or the other thing. The Christian is free to eat and drink what he likes, as we read in Colossians chapter 2 verses 16 and 21. And yet, whenever he is writing to the Romans and to the Corinthians, Paul issues a warning that a man must never claim the right to eat and to drink those things which might be the ruin of his neighbour, as we read in Romans chapter 14 verse 21 and 1 Corinthians chapter 8 verse 13. The Christian is free, but that freedom is controlled by responsibility and conditioned by love. Freedom without responsibility, liberty without love are not Christian freedom and liberty, for they can do nothing but harm. So I want to thank you. I want to leave the video here for now, and we'll come back in the next one. So I want to thank you for joining me in this video. See you next time. Bye bye.